Okay, so we are going to continue with human development before birth on our series topics of things you would rather not talk about. So, uh, as the sperm travels up through the vagina and the cervix, it has 23 chromosomes in it. The sperm has 23 chromosomes, and an egg has 23 chromosomes. But once they are combined, they're no longer like individual sex cells, but now they're actually a combined into 46 chromosome, and they make a body cell rather than individual sex cells. The important part of that is that sex cells divide by meiosis, but body cells will now divide by mitosis. So now mitosis is happening with the division of these cells. So after the sperm go into the vagina, they are moved up through um, the vagina to until they reach an egg. They can actually live inside of a female for like 2 full days, about 48 hours. But an egg, once it drops or is released or it's in basically released from the ovaries, it will only last about 24 hours. So fertilization can happen anywhere through that like fallopian tube, also in your book called the oviduct, all the way down to the uterus. Once an egg, or I'm sorry, once a sperm reaches the egg, it has this front little part to it called the acrosome, and the acrosome has lysosomes in it. And remember, lysosomes kind of like break down and get rid of cell material. So this little acrosome will break up the outer barrier of the egg to let the sperm in, and no one sperm can do this by itself. It's so tiny compared to the egg that it actually needs a lot of sperm doing this at once, and then finally one of them will wiggle into the egg, and then the egg throws on a new like locked down barrier to not let in any more sperm. So of the original like 3 million sperm that come into the vagina of a female during intercourse, only a few hundred will actually make it to the egg. So the next thing I want to talk about is here. So after the egg is first fertilized, originally it's called a zygote. So say the fertilization happened here, now it's called a zygote. Um, uh, the zygote is the first name that it's given, but then this tiny little human divides a little bit more, and it's actually called, in a solid ball of cells, called a morula. So it's right here, is the solid ball of cells. But as it gets a little bit bigger and divides a little bit more by mitosis, because remember, it's a body now. So it's not an individual sex cell, it's a body, so it divides by mitosis. After it starts dividing by mitosis, it actually is, and this is about 5 days along, it is called a blastocyst. So it becomes a hollow ball of cells called a blastocyst. Um, After about, once we get to about, that was day 5. Once we get to about to day 6, it is now started to attach or implant in the uterus, and by day 10 it is fully embedded and hooked up to the uterus, with different like even veins and things starting to grow to it to make sure it's nourished and fed. So here is like the development. There's 4 different types of membranes that surround the developing baby. One is the amnion, one's the chorion, one's the yolk sac, and one's called the allantois. So allantois is right here, since that has a unique name. So the placenta is the organ that surrounds surrounds the baby and gives it food and oxygen. It gets rid of waste. So the placenta is basically two major parts. So let me move down and get a little bit closer down here. So there's two major parts. One is the chorion and one is the uterine tissue. The placenta, or on the fetal side, that is the side of like the baby. It would be like this side in the picture, okay, or right here. On the side that the baby is on, this is called the chorion. Okay, that it's just going to be important later for either a test or like a book question. And the side, if you went to the side that's on the mom's side, then over here, that side is basically the uterine tissue. And you can see here there's like an exchange of blood. So the blood is running through these bodies similarly, which means nutrients can get in and out, waste can get in and out, and it goes out through the umbilical cord. So in pregnancy, it's no surprise that your hormones actually change at different points. So one hormone that's important is HCG. HCG basically helps build this. It's called like the corpus luteum, but it actually helps grow that. And HCG is also, unfortunately, what makes people like me super morning sick. So I don't handle HCG well. It makes me feel very nauseous, but some women find that they're fine with it. So during pregnancy, your progesterone and your estrogen levels, those two types of hormones, stay really high at all times. And remember, in the normal menstrual cycle, women are used to their hormones coming in high, but having sometimes that they're lower. In pregnancy, they're high all the time. So this is where some women feel like they cry easier, they get upset easier. When hormone levels are really high, it's just easier to have those emotions come on. And then towards the end of pregnancy, they will drop, just like at the end of a menstrual cycle. So humans take about 266 days to develop after they are first fertilized. And if you are asked a question about that, like if the egg was fertilized on this date, when would be the baby's due date? There's a lot of just online quick calendars that you could use, that it's just like, and you can just literally put it in online. But if you didn't want to use one of those, you could count, and it's basically 266 days from conception. So after 4 weeks, this is what the developing fetus looks like. And then by weeks 5 through 6, by weeks 7 through 8, fully, I mean, you can start seeing brain development, eyes, ears, just honestly, to me, kind of cute. Okay, so 9 to 10 weeks, and then at just 12 weeks, you can see how developed the baby can be. Okay, so by second trimester, let me make sure that I mentioned any first trimester. First trimester, which, you know, is shown here, basically all tissues and organs are developed. And basically it's really important to make sure that the developing baby has things that it needs to develop. And here's some things that mom doing or not doing, and what they can cause in the developing baby. So in the second trimester, which is about 18 to 20 weeks is when it starts, you can hear the fetal heartbeat. It can wiggle, the baby can wiggle their toes, sucking the thumb, hiccups, fluttering, light kicks, hair. They'll be opening their eyes and kind of looking around and starting to respond to those kinds of things. However, a baby born in the second trimester is majorly at risk a lot of times because they haven't gone through that last, finishing stages of development of like the lungs, body fat, things like that. In the third trimester, the baby starts to get fat under their skin, proteins, and a lot of brain development is now happening. A lot of nerves in the brain are forming. In fact, at 250,000 brain cells per minute. So very rapid brain development, responds to the environment like sounds, mom's voice, are all things that the baby can start to recognize and turn to and like attenuate to. So there's a few ways that babies can be checked on during development. So one way is like a doctor can do like an ultrasound through the vagina. Sometimes they will check with their hand. Then there can be ultrasound scanners done on the outside. You can have also tests done where doctors remove some of the fluid there that they can test, called amniocentesis, and test and analyze and look at the DNA work of the baby. And when the doctors do a karyotype, this is specifically what they are looking for. They are looking for to make sure that all of these match. And then I think we talked about them at some other point, but basically not having matching karyotypes, or having two cells at each of these. And I'm sorry, I said cells. I shouldn't have said that. Two strands of like chromosomes at each marker. Not having two chromosomes at each marker can indicate a problem. For instance, having 3 at number 21 can indicate trisomy 21, which is the same thing as Down syndrome. So when doctors do this, this is what they're looking for. And they should match all the way across the way, except for the last one, the 23rd pair. If you have a big one and a little one, then this is going to be a male. And if you have a big one and a big one, then that's going to be a female.